Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. So today we're going to take a look at parts of parabolas. Well, what is a parabola? A parabola is the graph of a quadratic function. Okay, and remember our equations that we've talked about so far are ax squared plus bx plus c and graph of a quadratic function. So let's draw a parabola. First, if you will, please draw your x and y axis. And let's just put about 4 tick marks on each line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a little bit smaller, but that's okay. All right, so what a parabola looks like, it looks like a U or an upside down U. So for example, I'm going to draw a few points. I want you to put a point at -1, 0. Put another point at 3, 0. I want you to put yet another point at 1, 4. Over 1, up 4. And then a third one at 3, 0. And we're going to connect those. Let me use a different color here. We're going to connect those to draw our parabola. Let me do a little bit better job. I want this to be the middle. There we go. So that's what a parabola looks like. Now you noticed I had you label some points. Well, these are important points on the parabola that we're going to examine in this lesson. So one we've already talked about, the zeros or the x-intercepts, which if you'll recall, that's why we called our solution zeros, because that's when y is 0. So our two intercepts, and on this one, in this lesson, I want you to write all of your answers as points. So our two x-intercepts are -1, 0. So that means our first solution would be -1. And our second intercept is at 3, 0. The next thing we're going to talk about on a parabola is the y-intercept. We talked about the y-intercept with exponential functions and linear functions. So remember, your y-intercept, that's just where the graph crosses the y-axis. And that is at 0, 1, 2, 3. And again, we're going to write this as a point. So 3 is our y-intercept, or at the point 0, 3. The next one we're going to talk about is the vertex. The vertex can either be a maximum if it's at the top of the parabola or a minimum. So this one, because it looks like it's on top of a mountain, it is actually a maximum. So our maximum point on this parabola is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's try one more, and then we're going to use our calculator to identify these parts of the parabola. So let's do another coordinate plane, x-axis, y-axis, do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and these are the points I want you to graph on this one. I'd like for you to graph. We're actually going to do 3 graphs so you can identify points. I want you to graph 0, 3 again. 3, 0, 3. I'd like for you to graph 1, 0, 2, -1, that means over 2 down 1, and 1, 2, 3, 3, 0. And let's sketch our parabola. This one, you'll notice, opens up. So I want to show you how to identify the parts on this. Let's start with our x-intercepts. Remember, we can also call those zeros. I want you to be prepared for either one. So the first 0 I see is at 1, 0. And the second 0 I see is at 1, 2, 3, 0. Now let's look at our y-intercept. Again, that's where the parabola crosses the y-axis. So the y-intercept is at 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 3. And of course, let's look at our vertex. So the vertex in this situation looks like it's at the bottom of a valley or the bottom of a barrel. So our vertex here is a minimum. And let's read that point. Over 1, 2, down, negative 1. So let's take a look at one more. Let's draw our x and y axis, our coordinate plane. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because you're going to see some interesting stuff happen. I would like for you to draw or plot the point 0, 4. And I'd also like for you to plot the point 1, 1. And we're going to use those 2 points to draw our parabola. What do you notice here? So if I were to ask you what are the zeros or the x-intercepts, what do you notice? I notice it doesn't touch the x-axis. Let me do a better job on this. This should be the vertex. Bloop, bloop. There we go. So you're just going to say none. Because it doesn't touch the x-axis, you have no x-intercepts. By the way, this would be a no solution answer to a quadratic equation. Now, you can also have none for the y-intercept. If it doesn't touch it, it doesn't touch it. But in this case, we do have a y-intercept. Okay, so it is at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now let's take a look at the vertex. What is the vertex? Is it a maximum or is it a minimum? Well, if it's at the bottom, like at the bottom of a valley, your minimum is at 1, 1. Now let's take a look at, see that was example 1, 2, 3. Let's look at what happens if we have an equation. So let's start with y equals x squared plus 9x plus 14. Well, I still want you to find the x-intercept or zeros. I still want you to find the y-intercept. And I want you to find the vertex and decide if it's a maximum or minimum and label the point. But I have an equation. However, we have a tool that we can use to graph that equation. So type it exactly as it looks. Y equals x squared plus 9x plus 14, and we can identify those points. So let's look at our x-intercepts first. I see -7 and -2. So -7, 0 and -2, 0. Those are my zeros or my x-intercept. Let's go back to our graph. Our y-intercept is at 0, 14. Do you see how when I touch it, it actually reads the point for me? That's going to be important on your assignment because you're going to have some things that are decimals. So that helps you get an exact reading. And now let's go back and look at our vertex. First of all, is our vertex a maximum or a minimum? Well, it's at the bottom of the parabola. It's down low, so it's a minimum at -4.5. So it's a minimum. Let's go ahead and label that. Minimum at -4.5. Oops. Comma -6.25. Yes. And let's do one more example. If they give you f of x equals -2x squared plus x plus 6. I want to remind you here, f of x simply means y. Okay, so when you type that in your calculator, That's how you're going to type it. So I still want us to find the x-intercept or intercepts, the y-intercept, and we're going to find the vertex and decide if it's a maximum or minimum. So let's type this in our calculator. Y equals negative 2x squared plus x plus 6. So first let's look at our, I need to make it a little bit bigger. Let's look at our intercepts, our x-intercepts. Negative 1.5 and 2. So negative 1.50 and 20. Those are my zeros or my x-intercepts. Next, let's find our y-intercept. That's where it crosses the y-axis. So that's at 0, 6. So my y-intercept is 6. And now let's look at our vertex. Our vertex is at 0.25, 6.125. Is it a maximum or a minimum? Well, it's on top. It's like looking on top of a mountain. That's the way I differentiate. So it's a maximum. So let's label that. Our vertex is a maximum at 0.25 and 6.125. Let me double check those numbers. Yep. So this is how you identify the parts of a parabola, which again is just the graph of a quadratic function.